we need to have one more stage of kind of template, and that is grouping certain things together in order to give us an overall volume level change for our output groups. Now we can do this by setting up a group or setting up a VCA. Now what a VCA stands for is voltage controlled amplifier, but in this case what it means is it's one fader that controls the volumes and the relative volumes of everything within a given group. So in order to do this, I can select all of my tracks here, or all of my output groups here. So drums, bass, vocals, instruments 1, 2 and 3, and effects. I'm not going to add the sends into this because the sends are purely the effects return. The sends bus is purely the effects return for all of our effects here. As you can see, our reverbs, delays and modulations all feed the sends bus, which goes straight to the submix. This doesn't go to our secondary level of mix bus possibility. So out of all of these, out of our 8 buses that we made, 7 of these are going to be given their own VCA fader. Now, in order to do this in Pro Tools, you can set up a group where you press Command and G to what's highlighted. It will show you currently in the group, we have the drums, bass, vocals, instruments 1, 2 and 3, and effects. At the moment, there is no VCA because we haven't made one. We need to make the group first. So what I'm going to call this is my out VCA group. So the name of the group is the out VCA. I can decide if I want to add anything else into this group here. At the moment, we're dealing with just the output groups. So we've got the type of group this is. Is it an edit group? Is it a mix group? Or is it a mix and edit group? We're going to make this just a mix group. So there's going to be no edit functionality. Again, this is purely output faders. We're not dealing with edits at this stage. So just to be on the safe side, we'll make sure it's only mix group. Press OK. You can see it's added nothing into the session here other than output or out VCA to the group level. Now we've got various groups of groups that we can have here. This is in our bank A of groups, output VCA. If I go down to the bottom left here in Pro Tools, you'll see that now I've got in my groups panel out VCA here, which is this is where we can monitor how many groups we have at once. But at the moment, all of our groups here, if I move one, it moves them all. The problem with this now is that if I want to make a change to this, I have to make sure that the group over here is deselected. In order to keep having to go back and do this all the time, this can become tedious. This is where we can make a VCA, where we can deal with the volume of all of the things in our group, but have a still relative volume to the individual parts within the group. So we're going to go Shift, Command and N, and we're going to make a doesn't really need to be a stereo or so on because this is just going to be purely a VCA fader. You see it doesn't give you the option to have mono or stereo, and we're going to call this the group VCA. Press OK. So now this group VCA here, we can decide what we want this to be. So no group, out VCA. So now as I pull this down, I don't necessarily have to have these grouped anymore. I can make a general balance to my individual groups, but then have a group VCA that will keep that general balance. This is excellent for when we're thinking about how much audio and how much volume we're going to be sending to our individual mixes. So let me just put these back to standard again, just by holding down the Option key and clicking onto the fader. Snaps everything back to 0. We're going to call this the group VCA. I'm going to give this a VCA color. All of the VCAs are normally like a goldy brown color for myself, but again, this can be whatever you want. This now gives you the option to be able to have these within a group, but not have the group selected. So I can have a balance to my relative volumes on one fader. This again has no output because it's just purely there to control what is within this section here of the group that I've made. As you can see, just to go back, the group isn't selected here, but the fader is still dealing with the things assigned to that group. One last thing to point out, you can see here that these solos are grayed out. This does not mean that the solo is not working, it means that it's solo safed. And the option for this gives you the option to maybe solo the drums and be able to play the drums through. In order to do this, you just hold down Command and click on the solo button and it will solo safe it. So for instance, I can play the drums now in solo and it will only play the drum parts for me because the rest of the chain is solo safed.